Hey guys, welcome back to Zilla MMA. I am your host as always, the Zilla. First, we'll start off by thanking all the viewers for the first two videos. A really big deal to me. The kind of viewership we've gotten is more than I could have really ever imagined. Even on the second video, just the analysis of the first fight night, I really wasn't expecting much viewership on that. And we did pretty well. The average viewer time is up from the first video, which is really promising to me. One thing we're still missing that I'd really like to see go up, please like and subscribe to these videos. I'm trying to put out more content that's really going to help me to do that. Comments are also appreciated. Show me what you like, what you don't like, any questions you have, those kind of things. I'd really appreciate those as well. But first and foremost, please go like and subscribe. So now that all that's out of the way, I know there's a lot going on in the UFC world today. Uh, Obviously, everything going on with the upcoming UFC pay per view. I'm sure everyone's got a lot of questions about that, is going to want to watch videos about that. I decided not to include that in this video just because there's still so many moving parts. I want to get my mind right on what I think is going to happen, make sure that everything's set in stone. So I think I'm going to release a separate video for that tomorrow. And in this one, just cover UFC Fight Night Yusuff versus Barboza. So, gonna get that video out tomorrow. Again, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that. Um, but for this, we're just gonna go ahead and get into the breakdown of this card. And I really enjoy this card. I like it a lot more than I liked last week's card. There's a few duds on the prelims, in my opinion, a few that I'm not crazy about. But overall, a really good card. I really enjoyed watching tape breaking this one down. So we'll start with one of the ones I'm not crazy about. That's going to be Ashley Yoder versus Emily Ducote. Ashley Yoder coming in here at plus 275. Come back on Ducote at minus 350. Kind of a low level matchup here. Yoder with a big size advantage, though, as you can see here. 5 inches in reach, 5 inches taller, 6.5 inches in reach. Uh, Yoder, though, she's very hittable. She's going to be looking to pump out the jab. She's going to look for takedowns. Something kind of concerning about her is if you go look here, she hasn't fought in over 2 years at this point. That's always a concerning thing to see. Looking at Ducote, she has definitely fought better competition. But from watching her tape, I really don't think she's that much better. She's also very hittable. She's got solid leg kicks, but I really think she's going to struggle with the length of Yoder. And in a low level fight like this, that's something I really think can play a factor. Watching these last two fights against Angela Hill and Loopy, I just do not have enough confidence to take her at minus 350. So with the odds you're giving me, I think I'm going to take Ashley Yoder here by decision as my pick. And I think Yoder at plus 275 is a pretty solid underdog bet. Moving into our second fight, this is going to be Chris Gutierrez versus Olatong Lee. Gutierrez at minus 325, Olatong Lee plus 260. Another good size advantage here. Gutierrez, significantly bigger, really talented striker. I think he's really creative with his striking and feints. We saw that in his fight against Frankie Edgar. But there's a possibility of him being exposed in the ground game. We saw that in the Munoz fight. Munoz able to get him to the ground. I'm not sure Olatong Lee is going to be the guy to do that. He's got a chance with his power, and certainly has a shot if he can force some takedowns. But I think there's a pretty dramatic skill difference, in my opinion, between these two. Even though the skill set might be there for Olatong Lee, I think that Gutierrez is the more skilled fighter. I think his takedown defense is going to hold. So I'm going to go with Gutierrez in this fight by decision. Moving into the third fight. This is going to be Alex Siva versus Melissa Dixon. This is the first, and I think there's at least one fighter in the next three fights where I really struggle to find very much good footage on. Dixon's going to be the one in this fight. Um, I'm not all that impressed with what I've seen from her. She moves forward and she throws some pretty heavy shots, especially um, for a woman fighter in low level like this. She lands more than you would expect. Um, but it is a little concerning. She's willing to get in the pocket and trade, and can be, if she's not doing damage, there's a good chance of her gassing out. I haven't seen much from her that makes me think that she's going to be an effective grappler. Um, Looking at these fights, I mean, there's not a ton to go off here. Um, but I'm really not I'm really not looking to go the other way either. I mean, I was looking for any reason really to take Alex Siva here. Obviously, I've seen her fight a few times before. I was hoping I'd go back, watch her footage, and feel better about what I see from her. Find something in here that led me to take her in this fight, but it's just not there for me. I guess she could have the advantage on the ground. I really don't like either side in this fight, to be honest. I'll give a slight edge to Dixon here. Minus 150, a little more than I want to lay with her. But my pick for the show is going to be Dixon by decision. We'll go ahead and move into the fourth matchup of this card. This is going to be Terrence McKinney versus Brendan Marat. Marat, another guy, very limited in tape for me to watch. But from what I've seen, I'm thinking this fight's going to be a real mismatch. Marat's not very technical, seems to be quite hittable. He does have a submission on his record. Yep, submission by rear naked choke. So maybe that's a path for him. But I haven't seen anything that leads me to believe he could get to the fight to the ground, even if he wanted to. Um, just looking at McKinney, I think he's the much more well-rounded fighter. Maybe the UFC's trying to get him a win here. I think he's probably going to get this done early, and even if he doesn't, I think he's got the better gas tank here. So no matter what happens, I'm with McKinney. My pick on this one's going to be McKinney by TKO. And we'll go ahead and move into our fifth matchup. This is going to be Lisboa versus Oliveira. Lisboa at minus 350. Come back on Oliveira at plus 270. We've got another fighter here where just not that much tape on him. And I think this is the last one that's like that. But Oliveira, just nothing that I've seen in the little tape that I can find can impress me. I almost don't even feel like she really belongs in the UFC. I very seldom say that about fighters. It's not something I like to say, but I just don't see it. She's only fought low-level fighters, and this is a good time to show you this. Fighters on their debuts more often than not. There's just not much here that leads me to believe that she's a talented fighter. From what I've seen from her, I don't see anything that leads me to believe that she belongs here. And I'm not that crazy about Lisboa either. I don't think that she's this world beater of a fighter, but I think she's much more technically sound, and she should be able to win this matchup, in my opinion. Excuse me, no matter where it takes place. I think she's the better fighter all around in every aspect of the fight. So I'm going to take Lisboa here. Even at that minus 350 line, she's probably going to be in some parlays for me. And my pick for the show is going to be Lisboa by TKO. This next fight, first one I'm really excited about on the card. Pretty much everything the rest of the way on this card, I'm pretty excited about. I think these are good fights the rest of the way. This is going to be Darren Elkins versus TJ Brown. A little concerned about some of what I've heard coming out of the camp of Elkins in the past couple of weeks. He's talked a lot about upcoming retirement, not necessarily after this fight or anything like that, but I've heard retirement discussions with him, and I really get concerned when I start thinking that fighters have one foot out the door. Even though I don't see Elkins as the type of guy that's going to let that phase him, it's just not something I like to see. I'm going to try and not account for that in this breakdown, though, and just tell you what I know about these fighters. So Elkin's gonna do what he can to make this a dirty fight. Obviously, he loves he's gonna be bloody. He's the damage for a reason. Uh, he's gonna go in. He's gonna come forward, eat shots, shoot takedowns. That's got to be the game plan coming in here for Elkins. Um, he wants to make it into a war. I think TJ Brown's the kind of guy that's going to be willing to do that with him. I think he's going to have no trouble going to war. Um, I think TJ Brown's the better fighter on the feet, but he doesn't do all that well defensively. And I'm a tad bit concerned. I've seen this a couple other times with people fighting Elkins that Brown is going to be landing shots, not be able to get Elkins out of there, and it's going to start to frustrate him. He's going to put himself in some bad positions. I don't want to see something like this Algio fight where he ends up in a rear naked choke, and I think that's something that could happen if things get deep into the fight. He feels that he's done enough to get Elkins out of there, and he's still just pouring it on, not ending the fight. I think he might let himself give up position. Um, but I still think Brown is probably the right side here. I don't like the line. I'm not going to be taking Brown at minus 225 straight up. I don't even really love throwing him in parlays. We'll see how I feel about that as the week goes on. But my pick for the show is going to be Brown by TKO. All right. And it's pretty much nothing but bangers from here. This is probably, I would say, actually, certainly my favorite fight of the card. Really like these two guys, Rodriguez and Simon. That's Christian Rodriguez at minus 165, Cameron Simon at plus 135. Rodriguez coming in here at 9-1, Simon at 9-0. So Rodriguez coming off a fight against one of the guys the UFC's really been pushing, youngest guy on the roster, and Raul Rosas Jr. A big upset for him in that spot, and he's gotten a lot of hype off of it, and rightfully so. I mean, he's a very smart fighter. He stays calm. He's great defensively. He does a good job game planning, making adjustments on the fly in the octagon. That's something you always like to see. He's a really talented fighter, but I do think he may be getting a little too much credit for being a young, inexperienced fighter. Rosas made a lot of mistakes in there, started to panic. Um, and I think that might be why this line is where it is, because I don't see any reason for Simon to be an underdog in a spot like this. Um, I'm a huge fan of Cameron Simon, just, being forthright with that. I love him. I love his camp. I'm a big Duplessis guy as well. You're going to hear me talk about him hopefully before too long. Probably will come up talking about the upcoming pay-per-view tomorrow. That's he's a guy who's going to be a big factor in that. But getting back to Simon, he's got great power, precise striking. He's also a very good wrestler. I'm a bit concerned what would happen in jiu-jitsu exchanges in this fight. I don't know who would necessarily come out on top in those. But this is easily my favorite fight of the night. It should be very competitive. If it was minus 110, I wouldn't fault you, each way. I wouldn't fault you going either way on this. But as a dog, I'm going to take Cameron Simon at plus 135. My pick's going to be Simon by decision here. Going on to our next fight. This is going to be Charez versus Lacerda. This is going to be the rematch. This is going to be the rematch of that really unfortunate bad stoppage from a few weeks ago that's now been ruled a no contest. You can see the lines actually moved. I actually have it right now at minus 300 for Edgar. And in the last fight, it was minus 225 his way. So I find that kind of interesting that it has moved that much on the little that we saw. We did learn a couple things from that fight. Lacerda is going to get the takedowns, and he sees that hole in Edgar's game. But Edgar's going to be a threat with his jiu-jitsu, obviously, when Lacerda tries to grapple. I was on Charez in the original fight, and I think I'm going to have to stick with that here. I don't think there is anywhere this fight can take place where he's not a threat to get the finish. I think he could finish this on the feet, even when he's on his back. I think he's a threat with his jiu-jitsu. He showed that. There's not any moment where he's not a threat to get the finish. So I'm going to take him, and I think I'm actually going to take him. He's actually going to get the submission this time. He's actually going to finish the fight this time. So let's take him by submission and move on to our next fight. Another interesting one here, one that I am very opinionated on. This is going to be Michael Pereira versus Andre Petroski. Pereira coming in here at minus 150. Come back on Petroski at plus 120. I'm not a big believer in Petroski, and I know a lot of people are. He's a prospect that a lot of people like. I personally think he's had some favorable matchups that have grown his popularity. But I think a lot of people saw what I already knew in that Meerschaert fight. I was on Meerschaert in that fight. I do agree, even though it was a split decision, I do agree that that Petroski got that, even though I was betting on the other side. But I think that exposed some stuff. Petroski is one-dimensional. He's going to start finding himself in trouble when he runs into talented fighters that have good jiu-jitsu, takedown defense, the ability to land a big shot before he can land a takedown. I think that's the one that he's really going to run into in this fight. If the fight takes place on the feet and Petroski's forced into just throwing those looping hooks that he likes to throw, I think he's going to be in some real trouble. Perez is the fighter that can expose him. And the line here just shows that people agree with me. I think Petroski being an underdog here shows that a lot of people have woken up. Maybe he's not the well-rounded prospect that everyone thinks. I've seen a lot of people comparing him to Pfeiffer from last week. I do not think these guys are on the same level at all. I think Petroski's going to he's going to eat the hardest shots he's ever taken in this fight. As long as Pereira doesn't allow himself to spend too much time on his back. I know he gets really creative with his shots. That's something that can play to his advantage at times, but sometimes it exposes him to things like takedowns. As long as that doesn't occur here, though, I think he should win this fight. I'm actually going to take him by TKO here. And we can go ahead and move into our last three fights. This one's, in my opinion, the real co-main here. Just completely transparent. I'm not crazy about that Jennifer Maia, Arujau fight being the co-main. I think it's very inconsequential. I don't really understand why that's the co-main. This fight, on the other hand, it's the closest line on the fight. Both these guys coming in at around minus 110. And it's like that for a good reason. Two really good prospects who are trying to work their way up, coming off really different performances in their last fights. So we'll first take a look at Jonathan Martinez here. And he's coming off of the win over Said Nurmagomedov. Got a lot of hype. He was an underdog in that fight. A lot of people are really liking what they're seeing from him right now. And then you go and take a look at Yanez. Very different for him. Took a big step up in competition. Took that loss to Rob Font in his last fight. I think both these guys are really talented and have a chance to have good careers in the UFC. These are both UFC caliber fighters, no doubt about it. I really think this one's going to come down to which fighter can impose their will. I think Yanez is the better actual boxer here. I think if he can press Martinez, pump out his jab, close off the fence, close off the octagon, I think he can win the fight if he can do that. I'm not sure what the best path is for Martinez here. I'm sure if it got to the ground, I give the edge to Martinez. I'm not sure Martinez is on the level where he can expose Yanez on the feet in the ways that Font was able to do. I'm not sure he's quite on Font's level. This is a really difficult fight for me, actually. I could really go either way on this one. Like I said, there's a good reason that it's minus 110 each way. I'm going to lean Yanez very slightly. I think he's motivated. I think he's going to bounce back from his loss. I'm actually going to take him by TKO here. I think that's going to be the right side. That's the way I'm going to go with this fight. And we'll go into the co-main now. And that's going to be Maia versus Arujau. Again, weird co-main in my opinion. I don't really understand this. Um, and not going to spend too much time on it. At this stage in the career, I think Maia's better pretty much everywhere. Arujau seems like she's got no gas tank anymore in that. Who'd she fight last? Hivas? Yeah. Yeah, in that fight she showed she really doesn't have much of a gas tank anymore. She was making desperate attempts at guillotines and she's throwing like slow single shots, not great combinations on the feet. I expect Maia to outbox her here. I think she's going to keep it on the feet. I think she's going to have the ability to dictate where the fight takes place. Um, yeah, I think she's the better fighter no matter where it takes place, especially after the first round. I think maybe Fresh or Rujao will be in this fight. This could be a pretty even matchup in that first fight. This may even be one to look at betting live if you have the ability to do that, especially if Arujau takes that first round. The odds get back closer to even. I think that's going to be a time to jump on Jennifer Maia. So that's really the best way to go about this fight, in my opinion. But other than that, just not that much to say about this fight. Really not understanding this as a co-main here. But we'll go ahead and move on to the main event. One that I'm really excited about. I think it's really good matchmaking in my opinion. It's Sadiq Yusuff minus 165 versus Edson Barboza. Comeback on my book at the time, it was plus 137. Yusuff coming in at 13-2. Barboza 23-11. Like I said, really good matchmaking. I fully expect these two guys to just stand and bang. I really think that's the way this fight's gonna go. Barboza is an absolute legend. Always will be with the way he strikes. He's always going to be a threat to finish the fight until he decides he wants to retire. I mean, he's just going to be able to do that forever, it appears, no matter how old he gets. Unfortunately, even though I'd like to lean Barboza here, I think Yusuff comes in with a good game plan usually. I think he's got the skill set to win here as long as he fights his fight. He can't allow Barboza to dictate what's happening in this fight. He can't let Barboza stay at a distance and strike with him. He can't let Barboza set the pace. He needs to pressure him, mix in his wrestling. I think Yusuff's going to have a pretty big cardio advantage here, so the deeper into the fight this goes, the more I think it plays to Yusuff's advantage. Again, there's always that chance Barboza's going to put Yusuff out in the first round. That always exists. That's something we talked about last week that ended up panning out against us. But from what I've seen, Yusuff's smart. He's technical. He knows who he's facing. It's no secret what's going on here. I think he should be able to do all the right things. This is a really big step up in competition for Yusuff. So you never know. Maybe that will affect him. Maybe fighting a guy like Barboza is going to be intimidating for him. I don't see it that way, but I guess that's always possible. But in my opinion, I think Yusuff has the skill set to win this fight. I'm going to take him by decision here. I think he's going to fight his fight, mix in his takedowns, be slow and methodical, and edge out the win in this fight. But that's going to cover this card. Again, for anyone who's still listening, anyone still watching, I really appreciate the viewership. Please go like and subscribe. It means a lot. And again, I'm going to try and get that video out tomorrow discussing the upcoming pay-per-view. I know there's a lot going on. Could even be more tomorrow. So I'm going to get that out for you. And I look forward to seeing you then. Until next time, thank you.